What's going on, guys? It's Elias. Welcome back to another Corvette video. Love this Corvette. But today we're going to be talking about the 5 flaws that the C8 Corvette has, and really why they don't matter. They don't matter at all. a lot of people always have negative things to say about their cars, and what may or may not be good, and there's nothing's perfect, obviously everything is a compromise, and cars are a compromise. And I gotta say, the more recent cars that are coming out, the Civic Type R, the Corvette, the new Supra, is becoming smaller and smaller what you have to compromise on. But there are 5 things that a lot of people like to harp on the C8 Corvettes, and I don't necessarily agree with all of them, and I'll tell you why, but they are something to keep in mind if you're going to be buying this car. Oh man, this car never gets old. Doesn't matter what I'm doing with it, doesn't matter how I'm driving it, it just doesn't get old. It's that good. So the first problem, and this problem actually was the problem that worried me the most about buying the C8 Corvette, and that's the understeer problem. Now, I'm sure if you've been following any Corvette journalist, any Corvette YouTuber, they've already talked about how the car understeers when you're trying to have some fun with it. Now, I'm in the middle of winter here, so it's a little bit cold out, and understeer is actually worse when it's colder out. Here's why that doesn't really matter, and here's actually what causes that understeer. As we know, manufacturers are in charge of making sure their cars are safe. They're one of the main reasons actually why there's such importance on safety is because one of Chevy's first forays into the mid-engine car, the Chevy Corvette, was one of the least safest vehicles on the road. And that has to do with lots of reasons, but it was a mid-engine car, and having a terrible suspension, having horrible control of the steering, people not knowing how to manage a mid-engine car, all of these things led to a very unsafe car where even, I believe Al Gore or another politician wrote a book, Unsafe at Any Speed. Kind of ridiculous, but it was true. And that doesn't mean that every mid-engine car is unsafe. Well, because of that, manufacturers today have to make sure that cars are as safe as they can be, so when they build them, and especially sports cars, they build them with understeer built into it. And what does that mean? Well, understeer is when you're going into a turn and you're going a little bit too fast, right? Something has to give. For the most part, every car you can buy today, as you're turning into a corner, if you're turning too fast, the front end of the car is going to slip first. After the front end of the car slips, then maybe the back gets into it, but almost always it's going to be the front end of the car. That's understeer. Oversteer is when the rear end of the car slips out. So a lot of people, they know what to do when the car's understeering. They hit the brakes a little bit, the weight transfers to the front, and you can go ahead and maneuver whatever you need to maneuver. So one of the things that manufacturers don't like to do is to give cars oversteer characteristics. Those can cause issues because oversteer is when a car overturns in a turn. If you brake under that condition, as you turn and brake, you're gonna overcorrect, and that's what a lot of people get fishtailing, and a lot of people crash in that situation if you don't know what you're doing. So that's why manufacturers put in understeer into the car. Why doesn't it matter for the C8 Corvette? So like I told you, manufacturers build it into the car, but the C8 Corvette specifically has very easy ways for you to mitigate the understeer problem. It's called the track alignments. It's all about alignments. If you know anything about suspension geometry is extremely important when talking about turning abilities and the way the car feels as you turn in. And the factory alignment is built for touring cars, for cars that are going to be used as vacation cars or road trip cars. They're very comfortable, and your tires are going to last much longer under the normal factory alignments. You put it under the track alignment, you're going to get more camber, a little bit of different toe angles, and different caster rates and things like that. And what those change is they're going to basically bow out your front tires. And in my opinion, I think you should lower the front a little bit as well, maybe lower the back as well. That's just for looks though, not really for performance necessarily. And when you do that, you get a lot more front grip in the car. I think it's 3.5 degrees of negative camber out front. That's a significant amount of negative camber on the track alignments. Now, when you do that, you're gonna lose out on that understeer. It's gonna become a more neutral car to handle with. And some people may or may not be used to that. And if you're going into a turn hard and all 4 tires are spinning or losing traction, you may have some issues. But it's very easy to mitigate that understeer problem in the C8 Corvette. Just put it in track alignment. And actually, if you really want to get rid of understeer permanently in this car, you can get thicker front tires, wider front tires. Right now, it runs either 255 or 245 with tires in the front and 305 with tires in the back on this Z51 package. That's obvious because the mid-engine cars, all the weight's back there, all the power's going back there, so it just makes sense to have bigger tires back there. But the smaller, thinner tires out front, they're going to be a little bit less traction-y, that's not a real word, here we are, than the rear tires. So if you get a 265 with tire up front, and maybe if you get different wheels, get wider wheels, you can get up to even, I believe 265 or 275 is about the limits that'll fit up front without major modification. You're gonna get way better front traction. Now, this may adversely affect your performance, right? You may be getting too much front traction, not enough rear traction. You may not be able to use the mid-engine weights to get you out of corners as fast as possible. So keep that in mind as you go along. But that is one of the main things that people love to complain about with the C8 Corvette, and that's something that none of us should really be worrying about. The second thing that people complain about the C8 Corvette, it's big complaints, is the fact that it's still using a Pushrod V8 engine. So if you don't know, a Pushrod V8 engine is very different than a dual overhead cam engine or an overhead cam engine. That's because it's a much simpler engine. Instead of having a complete valve train over the cylinders, it uses push rods and one camshaft to control the engine. One of the biggest benefits of this is the compactness of the engine, and the smallness equals lesser weight. So you get less weight, more compact, and honestly, with the developments and engineering they've gone into the V8s from Chevrolet, this is an insanely good engine with a direct injection, with its 6,500 RPM redline, which honestly is pretty high for a Pushrod V8. That's basically its biggest fault. Because it doesn't have a separate valve train, it really cannot rev as high as other V8s or V6s or inline 4s can. That's because valve lash and valve train floats can happen at higher RPM speed, especially when it comes to overhead valve engines or the Pushrod V8s that this has. Honestly, it's not a problem at all. 500 horsepower of this thing is amazing. It's bulletproof. It's been proven. This is a very similar engine that they put in the V8 trucks that Chevy sells. It's a very similar engine they put in the V8 SUVs that Chevy sells. It's a very robust design. I mean, as you know, the LS engines from Chevy are one of the best engines to swap into anything, from Miatas to S2000s to basically any other vehicle you can think of. Use LS engines, and this is a derivative of the LS engine. It's obviously a redesign, but it's an improvement over that. And if you're improving on the LS engine, man, that is not something that anyone should be worried about. The other reason you should be worried about that is because there is a flat plane crank engine coming to the Corvette very soon. So if you really don't like the pushrod, get that flat plane crank. You'll be all set to go. That does use what people would call a regular valve train, or a modern valve train that allows the engine to rev up a lot higher. So if you really don't like this new engine, this engine as it is, you can wait for the new ones. Honestly, it's not a big deal at all. I really don't care about that. This engine is a gem. Another problem is people bring up the Corvette in the same vein as, oh, American build quality, as if American build quality is a derogatory term. I'm here to change that. coming from Honda and BMW, those are very well-built vehicles. Obviously, as we know, BMW, as they get older, as they age, they may or may not be as reliable. But when you get a brand new BMW, you feel the build quality. All the panels are good, the metal's strong, the paint is great. And when you used to buy Chevys, that really wasn't the case. Even especially in the 90s, the 90s Chevy interior and exterior quality was garbage. I mean, terrible. I really do gotta admit, I'm actually surprised at how good this Corvette is compared to old Chevy. So the reason you really shouldn't complain about it, you really shouldn't worry about it, is because the build quality in this thing is almost impeccable right now. The interior is almost perfect. The way it's laid out, the engineering behind it, the way it drives, it's best of both worlds. If you want it to be comfortable, you can make it comfortable, especially with MagRide. If you want to go on the track and make it nice and stiff, it does that as well. This car is incredible value as well. I mean, this is the whole package. And of course, the first, let's say, 500 cars that any manufacturer builds, the first line, they're gonna have issues. I mean, look at the Civic Type R, a Honda known for a good reliability and very good engines and very good chassis. They had their problems too in the beginning. They had their harness problems, they had transmission problems, they have other fit and finish quality problems. It happens to every manufacturer. So you can't judge the entire 30,000 cars that Chevy's gonna sell, Corvette that Chevy's gonna sell on the first 500. So yeah, you had a couple problems with the doors not fitting correctly and a couple of fit issues here and there with panel gaps. But I looked through my entire Corvette. This is one of the earlier builds as well, and honestly, it's hard to find issues with it. There's little things here and there, but the quality is top notch, and I do expect this to last a very long time. So it's not something I'm worried about at all. It's not something you should be worried about at all. Coming again from Honda and BMW, this is a quality made vehicle. You should be, if you work in a Bowling Green plant, you should be proud of what you built, guys. American quality is back, and I would say American quality is top notch in the whole world. I'm saying it. If you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to argue with you, and let me know why. Let me know if you think other makes are making higher quality vehicles than Chevrolet makes the Corvette. I'd like to know. The other problem is that it's only an automatic. So when this car was announced and it was shown, when the interior was shown, you can basically see that you can never really have a stick shift interior. And for a lot of people, that's a big problem. And honestly, for me, I've always been a save the manuals type of guy. I have an S2000, a Honda Civic Type R, Honda Prelude. These are all stick shift cars. I lamented the fact that the 335D, the BMW diesel that I own, only came in automatic. I actually don't like it. That's because that 6-speed ZF transmission, while it's very robust and powerful, it's not very responsive. Things have changed significantly in the last 10 years. And I gotta say, this dual clutch transmission, this 8-speed dual clutch from Tremec, is incredible. Anybody that really wants to be involved in the car, this is why you want a manual. You want to be involved in the driving of the car. You want to be an integral part of the car. Have no fear, the Corvette gives you that with this dual clutch automatic. This dual clutch automatic is amazing. I pull a pedal and it's immediate. It's like that. It's 95 to 98% as good as the Porsche PDK. And if you know anything about Porsche PDKs, those are quality transmissions. This is about 98% of that. And honestly, you'd be hard pressed to find differences. I had my brother-in-law, a 911 Porsche Carrera S owner with the PDK, drive this, and he really was taken aback at how good this transmission was. And if you want involvement, you put it in manual mode, and without you, the car really won't function properly. You'll just redline in first and stay there, because you have to be involved in pulling the pedals. And the pedals are such a joy to pull, and it's just a great car to have fun in and be involved as the main person driving it. I mean, the cockpit also is made for the driver, and it's just perfect. Would it be nicer if it had a stick shift? Yes, it would be more involved, but the compromises that they'd have to make to do that, especially in the interior design, honestly, I don't think would be worth it. It also, according to the engineers, would have to poke a hole in the central tunnel, which would reduce the rigidity of the chassis. And if that's true, and I do believe them, I don't want that to happen. This chassis is one of the best things about this Corvette. All right, number 5, and finally, we get to the quiet exhaust issue. And I really don't see that as a problem, guys. This is the C8 base Corvette. It's going to be the Z06, it's going to be the ZR1, it's going to be the Zora, probably an electric one. The electric one, you're going to have a problem hearing anything. But when it comes to the V8 noise of this car, all you have to do is turn on the car while you're standing behind it and leave the exhaust in sport mode. And the exhaust comes alive. Obviously you want that if you're revving high and you want to listen to the engine and you want to listen to the exhaust, you get all of that. But you also get to listen to the engine right behind you. That's a good thing to have a mix of. You want the exhaust and the engine. If you want to hear the exhaust, like I said, just pull the paddles and go. You will have a symphony of Pushrod American V8 goodness. If you're looking into buying a C8 Corvette, let me know in the comments if you're waiting for it, if you're on order. If you haven't subscribed yet, I mean, what are you waiting for? You should definitely hit the subscribe button. There's going to be a lot of Corvette videos coming out very soon, and you're going to be missing out on all of them if you don't subscribe, guys. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you next time. Peace.